Hey everybody, welcome to 3D6 Charge, a podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k and the state of the game. This is episode 6, Points for Thee, Not for Me. I'm your host Chris Vo, and joining me today is the Palestinian purveyor of bear hugs, Omar Q, and the tactical terror of southeastern New England and possibly bits of Connecticut too, Ben Rubenstein.
Hello.
So, as you may have noticed, we've rebranded a little bit. Turns out there's a huge YouTube channel called Flashgits with like 3 million subs on it. So that doesn't do well when you're trying to launch YouTube content. Horridus, Omar is muted. Yeah, I noticed that. Omar, say hi again.
Hello.
There we go. So
thanks, Horridus.
So moving on to the major talk of the weekend, we have points. You know, chapter approved is still a week and a half out, but all of the GW NDAs have lifted, and you know, we've got review points from all of the review copies. I think Striking Scorpion 82 on YouTube is the one who's been posting all of that. You know, so what are your guys' initial reactions? You know, have you guys had had a chance to review the points?
Yeah, and we were not off with some of our theories, which was kind of nice. Drukhari got fucked though, and that makes me laugh.
Yeah, I've gotten a chance to look at most of the points. I haven't deep dived every single faction, although I have, of course, looked over the ones that I play pretty closely. For the most part, everything kind of just like went through an algorithm and went up, but there's definitely a couple models where they went in and like actually tried to make a change in the game, either because of maybe something that was happening in 8th or something that they predict is going to be happening in 9th. Some of those things make sense, and some of them really don't, like the Drukhari changes. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah. Acute Chronic also talks about Gene Stealer cults got real pretty hard too.
Oh maybe my god. Oh my god, Gene Stealers. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, GSC, I don't know. They were already reeling from changes in 8th, and they got nerfed multiple times in 8th, and then we roll over to 9th, they get nerfed again, and it's like this is. We always talk about like the vaunted GW triple nerf, but they're on like their 5th nerf in a row. They needed the first 2, but like you can stop now, GW. They're dead. Like,
just please stop kicking them.
I don't think that's how GW works, but it's one of those interesting things where Custodes got buffed, and while some people are going to be salty about it, they were basically unplayable as a faction for most of 8th, and it's kind of nice that they have a fighting chance now for a variety of reasons, but points being one of them.
Yeah, no, Hardy agree there. So instead of just grousing about every single points change that negatively affected our favorite factions and our friends' favorite factions, why don't we talk about who the big winners were of these points changes? Ben, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the obvious biggest winner here is Custodes, because they, for the most part, didn't even go up in points. The really big important thing to point out here, though, is that Foot Custodes wasn't an army in 8th edition. Like, you could certainly put them on the table, but my only time I've ever struggled playing against Custodes was like literal mono Forge Worlds, like Custode tank lists with like maybe a biker captain. The actual like GW like Foot Custodes were they just weren't seeing play because they had serious issues. The last time I played against one of them was at an RTT, and I think my opponent made it 3 turns before he didn't have any models left on the table. They just didn't work. They were too slow, but they also needed to get into melee, and they didn't have great tricks for getting into melee. Between their really strong chapter approved and this, I think we're going to start seeing them being played competitively, maybe even at top tables. They definitely got the biggest buff, but again, like they needed it, so I'm not like mad that like, oh man, GW just playing favorites because they're Imperium. Like, it's fine. They needed a huge hand. It is not unreasonable that they got one.
Yeah, I don't expect them to be completely S tier god army, but with Caladius's somehow being 25 points cheaper than what they are now if you equip the blaze cannons. Like, you got to have a plan for triple Caladius with the Vexilia with the -1 and Trajan giving them, rerolls. It's going to be another one of those types of gatekeeper armies.
Yeah, but I think it's also going to evolve because War of the Spider also gave them brand new tools, especially with Sisters of Silence, Acute Chronic, who can shut down Psychers pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just want to give a quick shout out. Deafuda, thank you very much for subscribing. I promise we will buy Omar a new microphone with your money.
I'm reluctant to make any sweeping judgments about Forge World things right now because GW has said they're going to rework all of the Forge World things imminently, whatever that means. So even if the Caladius ends up being like some ridiculous list, like we're literally going to get new Caladius rules in, I don't know, a couple months maybe. So there's not a huge deal. And like, I don't think there's a lot to be gained by deep diving in on like how good is the Caladius now, because it's going to be different soon.
Right.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't care about the Caladius.
Really?
I don't think a lot of people want to play Custodes. You want to play them because you've read the Horse Heresy books and they're sweet. They're these huge giants that go around and beat the crap out of the Trader Space Marines. Anyone can field a tank. No one gets to field these immortal giants who guard the Emperor himself. That's just cool. That's why you want to play Custodes.
Yeah, and like I don't care about the tank from that perspective. Like that's why I got into Custodes when I saw the tank, and that was kind of the thing. It was like, But also from just a rules perspective, War of the Spider gave them a really big boost. They get to keep all their old toys, they get new toys, and the way this new edition is structured, I think we're going to see Foot Custodes. I think we're going to see a lot of their Terminators. They have ways to get +1 to wound now, so they can, like, their Strength 8 Terminators can wound Knights on a 3. They're a stronger, more durable army than they were, and they get to field bodies, and I just honestly think Custodes are going to be in a great spot. One basic example is bike captains could not take out a knight for the life of them beforehand, and now they can. They'll be wounding a knight on a 4, but they'll reroll those wounds on the charge, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, and also just like we were talking about before with like the changes for 9th edition, like now I get to play with all the sweet stratagems. I mean, I don't play Custodes, sad days. Now Omar gets to play with all the sweet stratagems without also being priced into putting 30 to 60 guardsmen in his list. Now you just play mono Custodes,
right?
But also have the command points to do all your sweet things, and I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I also, the other thing is we're all talking about how they have command points, but everyone has the same amount of command points now. And that's huge, because even if I could get 12 command points as a Custodes player in 8th, you go against an Imperial Guard player or someone who's souping guard with like 30 command points, or a Chaos player who brings in Red Corsairs with 1 million command points. It's horrible. Acute Chronic. I'm not making the switch from RG to Custodes. I still love my Raven Guards, but I've had a Custodes army for a while. The bike captains are actually some of the first models I bought and fully painted and based. So they've got a special place in my heart, and I want to play with them. Raven Guard have a place in the meta, I think, and Space Marines are Space Marines. But we're talking about winners. And right now, my Banana Boys are winners.
Yes, speaking of your shield captain, I just want to share a quick story about Omar's shield captains that he painted. I remember I told him, hey, use Retributor armor and put Reichland Flesh Shade all over them, and then layer some, I think it was Auric Armor Gold on top as a layer paint. And he showed me what he did afterwards, and he was so proud of it. And I looked at it, I'm like, Omar, did you just put another entire layer of Auric Armor Gold all over this? And he's like, yeah, it's a layer paint. And it's like, wait, Omar, you're supposed to highlight with it. You're supposed to layer it on gently, not cover the entire goddamn model in your layer paint, erasing all of the work that you did with the wash and the base paint underneath.
I was unaware of this story.
I knew this was 1.5 months of hobbying and painting.
Oh,
yes,
no.
Chronic, reddest boys.
Yeah, I should have been a little bit more clear when I said what I meant by using a layer paint.
Well, I mean, now I know, right? And I'm excited to bring out the new bike captains that are hopefully going to look better than they were. But yes, glorious gold.
Yes.
We talked about some other winners.
Knights.
Knights might be a winner.
Yeah, Knights are a little tricky because for those of you who have not seen the points, the Chaos Knight Castellan went up 20 points and the Imperial Knight Castellan went down 110. And it seems unlikely that both of these things are true. So until we get confirmation from GW, like either I suspect they're both up 20 or they're both down 110, because for the most part, weapons and models that exist both in Chaos and Imperium moved in lockstep. And even more than that, I have never seen a Chaos Knight Castellan on a competitive table do anything other than immediately die and explode. Because they don't do anything. The Chaos Knight book, they last second edited in Dominus class knights. I don't know. There's just literally nothing in that book for Dominus class knights. Like, they're in the book, but like none of their sweet things really work with them. Whereas the Imperial Knight Castellan has we all know, like, it does really silly, gross things. And if it goes back down 110 points, we're going to see them again. But there's like no way that the Chaos one got nerfed and the Imperial one got buffed. Either they both got buffed or they both got nerfed. So we're going to need a confirmation on that one before we can kind of go wild on speculation.
Yeah.
But like, I think Imperial Knights did get buffed because there's a good chance if we're looking at the pattern, War Gear is getting baked into the cost, and we can likely start to afford other knights. Like, I see armies where you've got 3 knights and more armigers. Like, I think full knight armies might have a place in the meta. They're going to be very killy, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think Knights did pretty well. But it's hard to tell because I haven't done a super deep dive on like where the anti-tank options went for other lists. And they're kind of live and die on how well other armies are able to kit out units to kill them.
Yeah.
The other super obvious winner that we have 2/3 of us play is Thousand Suns. Thousand Suns were done extremely kindly too, with the points update. A lot of their best models, being their HQs, somehow went down in points, which is wild when everyone else went up. That Terminator Sorcerers went down. Exalted Sorcerers went down a bunch. Although Exalted Sorcerers didn't see play before, they might now. Chaos Demon Princes went up unless you play Thousand Suns, in which case they didn't go up, which again, not going up is basically like going down because everything else went up. And then Rubic Marines went up 2 points a model, but the Force Staff that the squad leader has is now free. So the squads went down 8 points. Right. So a 5-man Rubic Marine squad only went up 2 points. And with the removal of Killmore and kill points in general, 5-man Rubic Marine squads are going to be our new cultists, because a cultist squad is 60 and does nothing, and 5 Rubic Marines is 90 and does a lot.
Oh my god, the rubrics with everything they got in Psychic Awakening and with the new new GW missions with the lack of kill points is just...
Yeah, so Diafoda, you're asking if Rubric Marines are good. Chris and I actually played a game on Tabletop Simulator a couple months ago, and one of the shocking things to him was how much work my rubrics did. Now, I lost the game for other reasons, but...
It wasn't because of the Rubric Marines. The Rubric Marines, he used their Risen Rubric High stratagem, which is one of their new stratagems, and just dumped 20 of them just right in the middle of the board and said, come get me. And long story short, I couldn't get him, so I just got everything else around him.
Yeah, I was running 3 knights. I didn't pilot them well. It was an experimental list, but every game I've played with Rubric Marines using the new Psychic Awakening rules, I bring a blob of 20, and they work, and they do a ton of work. And now I want to address some potential salt here. A lot of people are going to scream about how Thousand Suns shouldn't be getting a buff because they were everywhere in 8th. But they were everywhere in 8th as a supreme command.
They were everywhere in 8th in the same way that Ahriman is the best goddamn Chaos HQ that you can take. So obviously you're going to take him. And then what's the next best Thousand Suns HQ that you can take for a Supreme Command detachment? Oh, it's 2 Demon Princes.
But as a faction, Thousand Suns were severely lacking. rubrics had no play. I remember talking to Ben before Psychic Awakening, and while they were more expensive, I remember when Rubric Marines were like 100 points for a squad of 5. And Ben, I remember you and I talked about it at one of my first tournaments, and you were saying how, yeah, I just take Zangors because Rubric Marines suck. But I bought a bunch of Rubric Marines because they're cool models. And for the first time, I'm talking to people about how I put Rubric Marines in my Thousand Suns list, and no one's looking at me like I'm an idiot.
Right. There is a very strong case for taking, a max unit of Rubrics, a max unit of Zangors, and then like a whatever unit of either more Rubrics or Cultists, depending on points. So even though we did see a lot of Thousand Suns representation previously in the later stages of 8th edition, as the Supreme Command Detachment du jour of Chaos, we're actually going to see battalions of them now, and not just because you needed CP.
Yeah, and like the other thing that's interesting is I've been playing the mono Thousand Suns or the mostly Thousand Suns army for a while now because one, I have Magnus and I think Primarchs are fun. We'll talk about him later. But two, I think I wanted to play a Psychic army, and I'm gonna just throw some controversy out. Fucking hate ITC. I'm really glad GW is doing their missions the way they are, because when I played ITC games with that mono Thousand Suns army, the ITC meta got me. And when I started running the more mono Thousand Suns army or Thousand Suns focused army in GW missions, I was suddenly able to win games. I wasn't necessarily winning by killing more. They weren't sweeping matches, but because the games were focused on board control, positioning, objective holding, doing things, as rudimentary and basic as they were, it gave me a fighting chance in a lot of ways. And now this is going to come back to why I'm going to say fuck ITC and why I don't like ITC. At least the ITC playstyle, the organization itself is incredible. Is because I remember when I was really getting the competitive side of things, GW put out they did one of their tournaments. And then when I looked at the top 5, there was a Necrons listed. And someone on Reddit had written an analysis of, like GW missions actually favor different factions, and there's a lot more room for experimentation and trying stuff. So I think people are going to have a lot of trouble initially with Thousand Suns Psychic Power because it's like Grey Knight, but it's actually worse.
Their psychic output is ridiculous. With the Cult of Magic, you can have a character that's doing extra mortal wounds with every power, and then 2 of his powers are going to be AoE. It's not real. Like you're gonna, if you clump up in the wrong way, he's gonna teleport in some awkward angle and kill like 18 models, and that's not an exaggeration. It's really scary.
Chris can attest to that.
Oh yeah, I definitely can. Did I tell you about that one psychic phase I had where I did like I think it was like between 18 and 24 mortal wounds because I took Cult of Magic and I had my Exalted Sorcerer on disc with all of those spells and traits and relics and stuff.
Yeah, you could do some really silly things with the Cult of Magic. And I think a lot of armies are going to be not ready for that. But I'm pretty excited to see Thousand Suns as an actual faction, although their main playstyle, which was you took a Cult of Magic Supreme Command Attachment and then demons or like some other thing to stand behind, knights, like whatever, like that's gone because of just the nature of 9th edition. That detachment would need to be a battalion now. You need to bring troops.
Well, no, that's interesting that you bring that up because I want to say that while you're not going to see that Cult of Magic Supreme Command Attachment, you are going to still see a Thousand Suns Supreme Command Attachment in 9th edition because they did change Magnus a little bit in the FAQ for Thousand Suns.
Yep. We can, why don't we talk a little bit about the FAQ? So yeah, they changed Magnus the Red. So the thing that I was complaining about in the last podcast, it's gone. If Magnus the Red is your warlord, you can now take a cult relic. We actually need a little bit of a clarification on this, is if you can take a cult relic or if you can take multiple cult relics, because the cult relic rule lets you take a cult relic from the cult of your warlord, and Magnus does not have a cult. So how does that work? So we do need a clarification in FAQ for the FAQ, if you will. classic GW. But in some way, they have alleviated the issue. We will find out exactly in which way in a little bit. If it lets you take multiple cult relics from different cults, bring 3 detachments, like 2 patrols and Magnus, and the 2 patrols are different cults, you can bring a cult relic in each patrol. Yeah, that gives Magnus some play because it'll be the only way of bringing multiple cult relics, and some of the cult relics are really good. Like Cult of Change, once per phase, you can turn one of your 1s into a 6 on a psychic cast. In every enemy psychic phase, you can turn one of their 6s into a 1. That relic's ridiculous. The Cult of Magic relic is a character. I'm sorry, did I say a character? I meant a demon prince, so when it dies, can stand back up and not be dead.
Yep.
The Cult of Magic is just +1 to cast. Like the cult relics are very good. Being able to take more than 1 be pretty good. I'm still not sold on Magnus, but that's a different conversation. I think we can probably talk lists more towards the end of the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's just, but it's also going to change how Thousand Suns get played because I can't run a million HQs. Because I would actually run a double battalion or a battalion of Supreme Command. And I'd have 6 smite casts.
No, this is the play for Thousand Suns. What you do is you take the battalion and you take the Supreme Command. If you're going to run Magnus, that way, you get the points back for your battalion, and then you run a patrol detachment, which costs you 2 CP. So then you're starting with 10 CP base. That unlocks 5 HQ slots for you. That's enough for Armon, 2 Demon Princes, a couple of Exalted Sorcerers on disc.
So I think the 3 of us could probably talk about Thousand Suns forever, but maybe we can come back to this later.
That's a future podcast episode. So
factions you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so like one of the big other changes for another faction that I saw with these points changes is Tau. First, let me get this right off my chest. Fuck Tau. I'm so glad that the shield drones are up 50% in points.
You deserve
got walloped, and yeah, shield drones deserved it. It is hard to argue in defense of a unit that people were taking more than the rule of 3 of, because you would take 3 huge units of them, which is normally what your limit would be. But then because you can attach them to other units, you'd take even more. The legal number for shield drones in a list via the rule of 3 is 36. I have regularly fielded over 40. So there you go. Legal quote unquote being, of course, like I'm not like cheating. You can fit them in other units.
Yeah, you just attach them.
Yeah, you just attach them to other units, and rather than having 3 groups of 12, you're like, all right, 3 groups of 8, and then a couple of 6s on my broadsides if I bring broadsides, but 2 on every single character because I can, 2 on all my troop choices because I can. Yeah, you can bring a lot, and seeing the number getting brought, I guess GW was like, yeah, we're done with that.
Yeah, and then the Riptide with the burst cannon going up 25 points too. That's right on. I think that's right on trend.
Yeah, that's on trend. Because the Riptides were already so expensive, going up 25 is actually a little bit less than the average. So that wasn't Riptides going up. They went up, like I said, yeah, so they went up like a little bit less. So they're actually not hit as hard as people were afraid of. A lot of Tau players were really afraid that the Riptide was just going to get hammered, and then we'd have potentially nothing because the rules of 9th edition hit all of our other fire bases. Just the nature of the rules make broadsides, commanders, and crisis suits much less desirable. But the Riptide's fine. The Riptide came out of it perfectly playable.
Yeah. I don't want it to come across that the Riptide is unplayable now because of its points increases or because the shield drones went up in cost. No, the Riptide is still very playable, especially with the Nova reactor. You can still get to that 4-up invul, which is still really big. It's just not a giant pain in the ass to try and shoot.
That invulnerable saves a 3-up.
That's an even better point, that the Riptide is not, as a unit, is not dead. Is 50 shield drones and Triptide dead? Yeah.
That's okay. That was terrible.
Yeah. Again, I think we should probably do lists towards the end. I do have some ideas for Tau lists that you're going to hate.
So one of the things that I saw for Tau, so if you thought that the Castellan change was bonkers, where it was 620 points for Castellan, the Taunar supremacy suit is 900 points. Now, if you're not familiar with a Taunar, a Taunar is a Forge World model that's about the size of a knight, except it has the guns it's the size of a Knight Titan, but it has the guns of an actual fucking Titan on it.
So
Yeah.
I've actually played against one in a tournament, and high key hilarious. So Chris, this was at the Bolter Hole tournament we did, and here's what happened. We were doing the chapter approved mission where if you're on top of the objective in the center, you lose your invuln save.
Ah, yes.
And it didn't have an invuln save. And this was before Doctrines. This was before Golem got nerfed. So I brought Ultramarines and a Blood Angels detachment. And I shot the thing off with Intercessors and Hellblasters who could just reroll everything. And it was the most hilarious game I had ever played. I just rolled. He had to video how many dice I was rolling at any given point.
Yeah, so to talk about the Tower is actually 900 points. There's some like very silly things happening at Games Workshop with whoever decided that, because it has, unlike our other super heavy, which is the Storm Surge, which doesn't do anything, it has the Battlesuit keyword, which means that you can shield drone it and you can command and control note it. So you can just for one command point be like, my commander is not going to shoot this turn, and the Tower is going to reroll all of its wound rolls.
All of its macro guns.
Yeah, so it for its firepower, it has about the firepower of like 2 full Hellblaster squads. Like each of its fists is about a Hellblaster squad. It's got 4 smart missile systems on its chest, 4 burst cannons on its chest, and then its back cannons are macro cannons that 3 failed saves is a dead knight. The model has a pretty ridiculous amount of firepower to be rerolling all of its wound rolls. On a ballistic skill of 2, of course, because Forge World. I struggle to believe that it's actually supposed to be 900 points. It was seeing Fringe play at 1,200 points in an edition where things hadn't just moved up 20% across the board. And also Forge World's getting reworked, so we should probably move to a new topic because this one's silly.
It is silly. I just think it's a massive oversight.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet it's an oversight, or GW is trying to catch all those crazy meta chasers who are going to buy a bunch of them, and then they're going to be useless.
Yeah, right. Another change that we forgot to mention when we were talking about Knights being potential winners, the Knight FAQ, they've changed the way Knight move over models. Knights used to be able to fall back over infantry and swarm. Now Knights can just move over non-vehicle, non-monsters, and they don't need to be falling back. You're going to see this is going to make blocking off Knight movement way harder. You should just put 10 guardsmen in a line in front of them. And if you do that now, they're just going to step right over them. If it's a melee Knight that can move like 30 inches and then declare a charge after it advances, move blocking is going to be almost impossible. It's just going to step over whatever you put in front of it with more than enough movement to spare, because they move so fast if they're kitted out to do that. Both Chaos and Imperial versions.
Yeah, and I think that's a very big change, because I had a game where I had 3 units of Nurglings, and the other guy had 3 Punchy Knights, and he got first turns, and I deployed knowing that he had first turn. So I saw where he put his knights. He packed it heavy on one side of the board, and there was one just very narrow avenue where he could walk down. So obviously what I just do with my Nurglings is I just set them 9 inches away from his knights, since they can't move over models in the movement phase, and he can't get rid of my models in the movement phase, because that's before psychic and shooting and all of the other things. That means that turn 1, his Landstrider Knight that could advance and charge and can be inside my asshole turn 1 from 30 inches away, he's moving a max of 8 inches on his first movement.
And in this edition, he's just going to walk right over them and kill your entire army because you foolishly put your screen not next to yourself.
Exactly.
That rule is going to get a lot of people. We haven't seen a lot of melee knights because of exactly this. You could just screen them out. You're like, oh, you have a melee knight. I will pay the guardsman tax, every turn.
Yeah.
And, so like 200 points of guardsman will literally make your knight irrelevant. And, the cheapest melee knight is still 350 points. So, but now you can't do that. Like that, he's just going to go over the guardsmen, go around them, kick people up buildings. I think that melee knights have a place in this edition that they just didn't in 8th because of some like very silly limitations that they had that they frankly shouldn't have had. There's no reason why 10 guardsmen standing in front of a knight should ever stop it from just like kicking a tank's teeth in, and now they don't.
Yeah, yeah. So let's pivot off of that. Let's pivot off of the guardsmen being just 4 points a model. They're now up to 5 points a model, and I just want to go down this list real quick. And while I go down it, I want you to continue to remind yourself that guardsmen are 5 points per model. So, Grots are 5 points a model. Cultists are 6 points a model. Hormagaunts and Termagants are 6 and 5 points a model. Guardians with a T3 and 5-up save, 10 points a model. Dire Avengers, 13 points a model. Fucking Storm Guardians, 9 points a model. Meanwhile, the Guardsmen, 5 points a model.
Brimstone Horrors, my 6-up invulnerable save, strength 1 guys, 5 points. They are as expensive as a guardsman because GW made a very strange and arbitrary decision that every model in the game must cost at least 5 points. And this decision makes no sense.
Yeah, so there was an issue before with people theory crafting like, oh, what if I just take a list of 300 grots? Oh, well, GW must have heard that and said, oh, well, then we'll just make everything at least 5 points a model. But it doesn't fix anything.
If you make the worst model in the game 5 points and scale everything from there, but they just took everything that should be less than 5 and made it 5. A Brimstone Horror at 3 points wasn't doing anything. Maybe you need to move it up to 4 in this edition. I was theory crafting some lists with like very large numbers of them, but in a world where they cost as much as a guardsman, it's like, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're
a guardsman that can drown you in strength 3 shots and reroll everything against Brimstone Horrors.
Hey man, once every 3 turns for the low cost of sacrificing your Brimstone Horror every turn, I can do 1 mortal wound. It's a silly change. A lot of infantry got hit with seemingly random points increases to levels where they're just not going to see play.
And a lot of it comes from GW was saying we want a more diverse table, we want bigger tables, we want bigger models. Like GW's trying to pivot Warhammer into something that is streamable and more entertaining to watch. And no one wants to look at a bunch of guardsmen. It's fucking boring. They want to see Space Marines, they want to see knights, they want to see vehicles.
But on the contrary, at 5 points a model, we're going to see a shitload of guardsmen because they're so good at 5 points a model compared to everybody else's basic troop choice.
Yeah, I was going to say
100% correct.
Oh yeah, all of the things that were good against guardsmen went up way more points than guardsmen. Like you're just not going to see very many of them, unless the meta ends up being as we're sort of predicting, Custodes and Thousand Sons, because guardsmen have a horrible time against Rubic Marines.
Yeah, they really do.
That would be it's really funny.
Wounding on 5s and saving on 2s. Ouch.
Hitting on 5s half the time.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, like, just...
6s with the right spell?
Yes.
Well, no, you can't give a -2. That's gone, remember?
Oh, right.
9th edition rules.
Yeah, so I think a lot of griping about model costs, like Howling Banshees and Striking Scorpions and Dire Avengers and what other Eldar models can I throw in just to rub the salt in?
Is you going to say it's not worth it after complaining about them? Let's find out.
It's really not worth taking them, but if you're playing Eldar, you have to, because they're the models you have. You can't just take a squad of guardsmen, but somebody's just... I'm just saying, why the fuck are guardsmen 5 points a model?
Yeah,
they have the Imperium keyword.
That's just not true though. Like, come on.
You haven't seen that flowchart though? The flowchart where what army should you play? And it's like, is it yes, play Space Marines? Maybe yes, play Imperium. No, play Chaos. No, but expensive, play Xenos.
Fair enough. I do think that Eldar will be fine in the new edition. Like they're going to be okay. That's Craftworld, Eldar, and Harlequins. I don't. What happened? The go-to Drakari list, the Drakari list that I played against the most. I've played against lots of different Drakari lists, but the most successful one has consistently been as many Cobblate warriors as you can fit into as many boats, holding as many disintegrator cannons as possible, and all of the things I just went up unbelievable numbers of points for seemingly no reason. The boats didn't go up too much, but the disintegrator cannons went from 15 to 25, which is a ridiculous jump. Why? Because it's the exact profile you want against a primary Space Marine, and that's not acceptable in this game, I guess. And then Coblite Warriors went from 6 to 9, and a Coblite Warrior is just a vessel for which to put special weapons on. You got some random shots from the squad, but you were excited because of all the sweet special weapons that you could put in them and then put them on your pirate ship.
Yeah, didn't you just jam blasters into Coblite squads?
Yeah, you could have a Coblite squad, like a 10-man squad could have like a blaster and a dark lance in it. You could do like a lot of sweet things, but they're so expensive now. Like that squad went up 30 points. They're not tough. They just die. The second they're out of the boat, they're gone.
Yeah, I mean, Eldar are glass cannons, but they're goddamn cannons.
Yeah, but the cannons are so expensive now for that list. That list is going to really struggle. It's definitely going to have to pivot and look at some other things. Yeah, not everything in Drakari went up a ton. So there's probably something out there, but I'm not a Drakari expert, so I only was kind of looking at the things that I already know to be good.
Yeah,
Someone
again,
who's good at Drakari, we know that will be able to make something out of it.
We know that the Eldari in general are very high skill ceiling army, so they're still gonna be good. Sean Naden's probably still gonna be able to make something happen with Craft Worlds and Drakari.
Yeah, we will see a Drakari army. It's just gonna be very different from the one that we currently have because they're just gonna be playing down like in 8th edition points. They're gonna be playing down like 300 points. The Thousand Sun lists I've written up are playing down 87. Like it's different, so different.
Yeah, but also one saw play more than the other.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like that's the thing I want to tell all the folks who are getting hit with a nerf bat. A lot of the armies that I'm seeing getting nerfed, outside of orcs, saw a lot of play, and they saw a lot of play in a very specific way.
Orcs saw a lot of play though.
I've only played against one orc army. Nope, two. So I might also be wrong. It's happened.
Yeah, orcs. You don't see them a ton just because painting an orc army is a commitment, and those of you who've done it, I'm very proud of you. But competitively speaking, they're very good. Like it is a strong army. There's tons of things going on in that book, and they have lots of different tricks. Generally speaking, you see them placed pretty highly in tournaments. And the reason you don't see them placed more highly in tournaments is because no one wants to paint 500 boys.
Yeah, the thing is about somebody who plays orcs is that person plays orcs. Like they always will, and they've got like 5,000, 50,000 points of green boys like somewhere on the shelf waiting to go. Sure. You just don't find those people often.
I think one of the issues for orcs is that I'm not 100% sure what happened with their points. I really didn't look very into them. Were there any like really egregious things in their points?
The one thing that I did notice is, and it's not even like this kills competitive viability of orcs. It's just a head scratcher is Flash Gits. And
yeah, Flash Gits got hit really hard.
Like I don't understand why.
So I'm not going to say that kills orcs though, right? Because orcs have so many like replaceable effects for a thing that to jump to murder any tank or heavy infantry squad. Like there's other things that orcs can do that on, and that's not going to kill them. But I think the bigger hit that they took was just the nature of 9th edition. They wanted every single HQ slot they could possibly get their hands on. They wanted like a million troop choices. They were playing with 18 command points in almost every single list you ever saw. So they're just going down in command points. They're going down in HQ slots. And it really hurts them.
Yeah, orcs were one of those armies. Orcs were one of those armies. Orcs were one of those armies that you saw them taking triple battalion, not because they had to, but because they wanted to.
Well, they had to too. They have so many insane stratagems that they just wanted all the command points. But it was all upside, right? Like their troops were good. There's nothing wrong with just being like, here's 90 grots and a bunch of sweet elites, or here's a million boys and nothing else. Like all of their options for filling out 3 battalions were just very good.
Acute Chronic and Prince Commander Revenant are talking about how orc players have a personality disorder or how they're having more fun than the rest of us. I think orc players secretly hate themselves because why would you paint so many of the same goddamn model?
I don't know. Every orc player I've ever played against is having a better time than I am, win or lose.
That's That's absolutely true. They really just embody the Mad Doc or Big Mech personality when they're playing their lists.
I guess I need to play against more orc players.
You do. It's a great time. I've been playing against orc players. This played against a guy who was shouting "Wah" at the beginning of each return. Like shoveled half of his army into his little carry case by like the end of the second turn, and by like the end of the last turn, he had like one last guy like running around the table. This guy still had a huge grin on his face, and that guy was wahing down to his last war boss. Like I don't know, they just have a good time. That's my experience with orc players. I could be completely wrong, but that's what I've seen.
No, that's fair.
Orc players are ride or die. You don't really see that too much with too many other armies. I mean, you might see it with some people with how they might be devoted to chaos or play Space Marines only, or have just craft worlds.
Very nice, Chris. So that being said, now that I've said a bunch of negative things about orcs, that codex is so full of stuff and things, and they've got like 6 Psychic Awakening, and like really wild things going on with all their models. There's a competitive 9th edition orc list. I don't know enough about orcs to tell you what it is. I'm not particularly concerned for that faction. Someone's going to put a bunch of models with absurd names I've never heard of before on the table across from me that are painted green, and they're going to crush me with it. Like, it'll happen.
Excuse you, the Boondocka Snazwagon is painted red.
Sure. Whatever, man. I can't see the difference between those colors anyway, so they're painting green to me. So any other factions that we'd like to touch on?
Omar?
Chaos Space Marines and Warp Talons going up to 23 points per model.
Good lord, what happened?
So I've been a big proponent of Warp Talons, the same way that I've been a big proponent of Helldrakes, and that if you want, they're not killer units, but they're very annoying utility units, and they did their job well. But with every single rules tidbit that GW dropped, the case for Warp Talons died a little bit more, and it kept on dying. Like, first, Overwatch is a stratagem now. Well, that's cool, I guess, except now Warp Talon, not being Overwatched on the turn they drop in, that kind of took a little bit of hit utility-wise. And then, now you have to make every charge that you've declared. You can't just say, I declare everything within 12 inches because you can't shoot me. Oh, okay, so I guess that's gone down a little bit now. Oh, what's that? They're now 23 points a model base.
And you can't wrap things.
And you still have to pay 10 points for fucking Lightning Claws.
Yeah, before we go wild on Warp Talons, strong chance that they had thought they wrapped their weapon gear into them and then they forgot to. So I think we should give GW a second. There's enough mistakes in this book that I'm not willing to just say, oh yeah, Warp Talons are definitely
most of the mistakes that I've seen regarding that is them just forgetting to, they have to take this weapon choice, and we thought we baked it into the cost.
Yeah. But there's other things happening in Chaos that are like also egregious that we should probably talk about. And I would like to talk about Demon Princes. All Demon Princes are 160 points on foot and 195 points if they fly. That
Thousand Suns untouched.
A ton. Yeah, Thousand Suns, their walking princes went up. No, sorry, their walking princes are the same. Yeah, like it's a very strange decision that rather than increasing all the princes up at the same rate, the best one stayed where it was, and all the other ones went up to go meet it. Now I will say that in 8th edition, the difference between a Thousand Suns prince and a not Thousand Suns prince was like a big issue, because if when you were building your list, you could just take a Supreme Command attachment of Thousand Suns, which just made you feel very silly putting any princes in your list that were not Thousand Suns, unless it was the Corn Demon Prince that had the can opener axe. Yeah. So unless you were bringing specifically him, you just felt pretty silly putting a prince in your list that wasn't just a Thousand Suns prince. And then now we're kind of back to, that Thousand Suns prince is now going to cost you command points. So I guess there's that argument, but man, like I don't know if normal demon princes are going to see a ton of play.
I don't think they are. Because think about it, like in a vacuum, which demon prince are you going to take? Obviously, the Thousand Suns demon prince is far and away the better one. It has 2 casts and has a 4-up invul.
Yeah, the Death Guard one is also on the table now because they got some sweet stuff out of their Psychic Awakening. But
I think the vanilla Demon Prince is going to be out for a while.
yeah, he's in a lot of trouble. The other thing is they cultists went way up, and to a point where they're barely playable, but somehow Chaos Space Marines are still the more expensive troop choice.
Cultists are way worse now, and somehow Chaos Space Marines are still worse.
Yeah, somehow we're still going to play cultists, and that makes me scream on the inside. Fortunately, we don't need to play many of them because we don't need them for command points anymore. It's not all doom and gloom. There is some upside. Terminators barely moved, and that's huge. Chaos Terminators have some really gross things going on with them.
So
and Terminators have a place in this edition.
Yes, they do, because if my feeling is correct, once we see the Grand Tournament missions, if objective secured isn't going to be as important as it was in 8th, or if you just like can play well and position your Terminators well enough where objective secured doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you're 3 inches over the objective, if they want to be on it, they're melee with you,
then it's no brainer. You're going to take Terminators because they're was it 24 points with weapons now, 25-ish, something like that.
Yeah, they're really, really cheap.
Yeah, where it's a 3-up, 5-up save with 2 wounds, and it's less than twice the cost of 2-up save. Even better.
Yeah, Terminators 2-up. That's what makes you a Terminator.
Yeah, 2-up. Yeah, so a 2-up, 5-up, and you cost less than 2 Chaos Space Marines. The only thing you really lose out on is like that extra punch.
No, you don't. They hit so hard melee. Are you kidding?
No, I mean like the extra like physical like punch, like the extra attack that you get from just having 2 bodies.
They have 2 attacks.
They have 2 attacks.
So you miss out on one attack. You miss out on one attack then.
It's a weird internal balancing thing where, like, for the low cost of OBSEC, I'm taking a nearly strictly better model. Also, keep in mind that they have really good weapon options, and a lot of the legions can do very silly things with their Terminators. Like Emperor's Children Terminators basically can't fail charges because after they roll their dice, they can look at them and go, "I'm going to turn one of those into a 6," and then they'll look at that. They made it.
Honor the Prince, baby.
Yeah, they can World Leader Terminators will kill at least one unit. You can turn them into Khorne Berserkers, and they have all the Khorne Berserker rules, and they will kill literally anything that they touch. This also brings me to another silly points change where GW wanted to like unify a lot of things. They decided that multiples of 5 look good on paper, so they wrote those numbers a lot. They moved Power Fists up a point so that they're 10, and they moved Chain Fists down a point so that they are also 10. And Chain Fists are Power Fists, except strictly better in every way. They have the exact same.
Why did you do this?
Chain Fists have more AP. They both have an average damage of 2, but Power Fists are D3, so inconsistent, and Chain Fists are flat 2, so very consistent. So if you have Power Fists on your Terminators, go ahead and add a little Chain Sword nubs to them because you're wrong. And it's silly. Like yeah, before it's like, all right, I'm saving 2 points, and the 2 things are close enough that like I could see the argument for saving 2 points because it's not significant, but it is strictly better. And now it's just like it's just the same point cost. Why do you not have Chain Fists on your Terminators? What are you doing, guys?
Yeah, that's insane. I totally missed that change.
It's a really silly change.
That is super silly because where they were before made perfect sense. It was like, oh, you want to pay 2 more points, get a little bit more AP? Yeah, that's a worthwhile price. Sometimes you might not want it, but the option's there. Now it's not even a question. It's the GW made that decision for you. Take the Chain Fist.
Yeah, the Chain Fist is really good, and if they're Khorne marked, they're punching down knights because Death to the False Emperor and Veterans of the Long War double fighting. Like you're gonna have the command points now without wasting a bunch of points on cultists. The reason we didn't see piles and piles of Chaos Space Marine Terminators is because we had wasted all of our points on 90 cultists so that we could have command points to do sweet things with the one unit that we could afford. You're gonna see lots if Chaos Space Marine Terminators. Not necessarily that Chaos Space Marines are gonna be a top tier faction, but if you're playing Chaos Space Marines, they're going to have Terminators. That unit's very good now, and they're going to do some scary stuff.
Look, we all know that I'm going to continue playing Chaos and Chaos Space Marines in general. So I'm gonna try to make it. I'm gonna try to make it work. Omar, you bought me a box of Chaos Terminators for like Christmas that I honestly haven't touched, but now I have a reason to.
Yeah. If you're playing against Chris and your list can't kill 20 Chaos Terminators, you may as well just concede.
No, I think ninth edition is going to be an edition where we see a lot of Terminators. Space Marine Terminator. Oh, just one thing from the chat. Dave Photo is asking, how about a comment on Space Marines? We dedicated last week to Space Marines, and even though I'm a Space Marines player, I'm kind of done talking about them for a minute.
I mean, we could talk about winners and losers in Space Marines. Space Marines, like we talked about before, they're sort of not one faction. There are many different factions, and it's hard to say, oh yeah, they won or lost. Different factions within the Space Marines kind of won or lost. Imperial Fists lost. Every single thing that you were seeing, lots of Imperial Fist armies went up way more than the average. The average Imperial Fist list was a bunch of artillery and some intercessors. Intercessors are still good. The artillery is so expensive now. They were already kind of on the outs because of our first big FAQ from Space Marines, where they only have one turn of doctrines. And now that Thunderfire cannons are like 140 points, I just don't think you're going to see them. On the other hand, lots of melee Space Marines are going to get pretty scary things out of the fact that their troops are still very reasonably pointed. Outriders are going to be really strong. That's the new Primaris Bikers. And so the jury's still sort of out on Raven Guard. Centurions did go up, but we're still going to see a big squad of them, though.
I think Raven Guard won.
Yeah, I do too.
I think what's going to happen is Ben, that list you and I talked about, like how the list approach we talked about in Captain Con, where you're not just going all in on the Centurions.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's what it's going to start looking like, where it's a little bit of character hunting, it's more board control. You're still going to throw in Centurions because fuck you, I'm going to infiltrate 6 Centurions in your face and ruin your day.
Yeah, I think the list we're going to see at Raven Guard is going to be like 6 Centurions, and if you can't beat that, you're in a lot of trouble. And then if you can beat that, they're going to still be a reasonable list with a bunch of character hunting. The character hunting is going to be really good for them because, like we've been talking about with the new edition, if these are the missions we're playing in competitive, these secondaries are super, super hard to score. And being able to point at a secondary and being like, my army scores that easily is huge. Yeah. And so being able to I will score 3 points for every character in my opponent's army because I'm just going to kill them because I'm bringing Raven Guard snipers. Yeah. That's huge. That's going to get them a lot of points.
Yeah, and like playing Raven Guard. The other interesting thing is I was thinking about eliminators. I think they're not as big of losers in Raven Guard as we thought they were because they'll still get their +1/+1 with an extra shot. And
yeah.
That,
also, Q Chronic. Yeah. Raptors, Raven Guard successor chapter, lost their name character.
Yeah. Which is good.
Yeah, and the big one, right, was, of course, Chaplain Dreadnoughts Legends. Goodbye. You will not be missed.
Yeah. Like a lot of cheese.
As the monster who ran 3 of them at every tournament while they're illegal.
But a lot of cheese is gone. I think Salamanders are going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, that new Melta unit. I have a buddy who plays Salamanders. We've been talking about lists. I believe he's listening right now. Yeah, that new Melta unit in Salamanders is going to be scary. They're going to like walk on from a board edge and be next to the Salamander named character Vulcan. Vulcan, for those of you who don't know, he has a Gilliman aura, but only for Meltas and Flamers. So they're going to have full rerolls for hits and wounds on Melta weapons, and they're just going to literally melt any piece of armor that they can get with range of, and it's going to be really scary. I think that we're going to see Salamanders, if the meta shifts to be very tank focused, we're going to see some pretty scary stuff out of Salamanders, which is neat because that faction's been pretty bad recently.
It has been, and the guy that we're talking about, we'll just say G.
Gil?
Or okay, well, since you just outed him, Gil.
That's actually not the person I was talking about. I'm actually talking about a different Salamander player, also named G.
Holy shit, there's 2 of them.
Yeah, there's 2 of them. They're multiplying.
They're growing.
Well, the one that me and Omar know, Gil, he's a good player.
Yeah, he's great.
But he's a great player. He's also a very, very, very nice guy.
Yeah.
But, Salamander is ride or die guy, right?
Yeah. I don't think that Salamanders are going to be top of the meta. I just think that they're excited that they can look at Imperial Fist and say we're not the worst Chase String chapter anymore.
Yeah. Well, what I'm trying to say is, Gil's a good player. He's just been a little hamstrung by virtue of playing Salamanders. But with these changes coming up and with Eradicators being super insane Primaris Fire Dragons.
Yeah, the other big help for Salamanders is that kill more not being a way you score points anymore, bringing a bunch of MSU units is going to be great for them, and that's what they want to do because they get that free reroll per squad.
Yep. Yeah. So actually, go ahead, Omar.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think the sleeper hit for Space Marines is gonna be Ultramarines.
It's not that sleeper. They're great.
I mean, are they?
Yeah.
Yes.
They were never bad. That's the thing.
They were never bad. At no point were Ultramarines bad. It was just if I was going to try to play a competitive Space Marine army, I was going to play Iron Hands because they were a little bit more broken, but not like Ultramarines were still better than everyone else.
Yeah, Ultras were never bad. It's just that they just got really overshadowed by Iron Hands and Imperial Fists because they were just so like inherently broken. They went beyond a good army.
Yeah, they also had the really awkward thing where the Iron Hands and Imperial Fist armies were good against other Space Marines and just kind of hated them all out of the meta. Like you were not beating an Iron Hands list playing Space Marines that were not also Iron Hands or Imperial Fists, and that was just sort of a nature of the matchup.
Well,
I think Ultramarines are going to be very good. Sorry.
No,
I'm like rating on your parade because you want to say that they're going to be a sleeper hit, and I'm like, no, everyone already knows, but no, you might be right.
I didn't know. In my mind, Ultramarines were like kind of good, pretty okay, no longer broken. That was my feeling when I looked at the supplement, and I was like, yeah, there is a solid army here. They're just not necessarily broken anymore. And then
yeah. It's a little challenging to know exactly what is the sort of public's opinion on things because we're not going to tournaments. What I know is what I've read from Reddit, which is not an excellent source, and like my 12 Warhammer friends who I talk to regularly, and I guess in that group of 12 people, we're all pretty in on Ultramarines. We think that they're going to be pretty solid in the meta. Does that make it public knowledge? I guess not. All right, they're sleeper hits. You're right, Omar. You got it.
I appreciate the bone.
All right. So do you want to talk a little bit about like actual lists now, or is there any other topics you want to hit first?
No, let's move on to actual lists, and I think one of the things that we're going to see influencing the list is how hard the secondaries are to score. So everything that I've seen has said that it's going to be rare that you're going to have a secondary that is going to get maxed out. So having something like Raven Guard and character sniping, that's going to make it easy. Because what we were seeing towards the end of the ITC reign in 8th edition was that secondaries were a foregone conclusion. Unless you severely messed up, you were going to max out all of your secondaries, and it became a matter of who was going to kill more, hold more, or bonus.
Games. Yeah, you were missing out on like 8 of your potential 42 points in a good game. Like you were getting high 30s. Games were won by a couple points by like making them miss a kill on a turn or something. Like it was. And secondaries, you just got them. Like you put models in your army to score secondaries, and if you could even sometimes build armies where you just didn't think about the secondaries because you're just going to kill your opponent hard enough that you could just pick some and do it. And this new secondaries, you have to really, really be building your army to be like, all right, what are the 2 secondaries that I can just take against anyone? And it's hard. Secondaries are really tough.
Yeah.
So what are your list ideas for being able to score these secondaries? Is mobility going to be at a premium here?
Mobility is important, but I think durability is more important because secondaries are scored at the beginning, primaries rather, which are also hard to score, by the way, are scored at the beginning of your turn, which means that if you get on an objective and then you get shot off of it, well, why did you even bother getting on the objective? And I think that's going to be also just talking about like rather play patterns. This is very much an instinct to jump onto objectives if you could. And in 9th edition, if you look at an objective like, yeah, my model can move there, it's a good chance that it doesn't score you any points to put your model there unless you took a secondary that scores at the end of your turn, unless you're actually confident that whatever you're putting there is tough enough to stay there. And not a lot of things are going to be because, your opponent's incentivized to knock you off. The board's smaller, more things are going to be in range of it. Durability is really key.
So what you're saying is Primaris Outriders.
Yes. Although actually, I think what Primaris Outriders are going to use for more often is denying your opponent mobility. We're going to see those go into the units that your opponent is planning on scoring points with. So
I mean, from a list building perspective, I'm going to be putting Primaris Outriders into my Raven Guard list because I can infiltrate.
You and every other Space Marine player will be playing as many Primaris Outriders as you own, up to 3.
Yes, but especially in regards to being able to infiltrate them, if I know I'm getting first and I infiltrate my Outriders, dude, that board is now mine. I can go anywhere I want. I can probably charge most units on the board, and I can definitely shoot things.
Oh shit! So, should I actually order Indominus now that I have a job?
Yeah, you should probably do that.
Yeah, you should probably do that, especially now that you can actually get it.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Indominus is now made to order, although they will be slower, I guess, presumably because they have to reprint 1 million of them. The box is unbelievably popular.
Yeah. And scalpers also.
And scalpers, yeah. People just bought like 20 of them from stores the second they went up.
You know what? Release day, I'm just going to stop by the store when they open, and just see if I can snag one that was supposed to go on the wall. I probably won't, but we'll see.
Try.
Fair enough.
But that's where I think Outriders have a place. But the other one is aggressors because mobility is going to be important. But like Ben said, durability is too. So.
So as far as actual lists go, by the way, I have a couple actually written up 9th edition points. We were all talking a ton about Thousand Suns.
Okay, let's hear it.
Yeah. So the one I have a couple, I'm going back and forth, but the one that I'm most on is a patrol of Cult of Time. This list is a little strange because we have a patrol with all of our troops in it and a battalion with very little troops in it. Cult of Time, for those of you who don't know, can reanimate their models. So we have 2 groups of maxed out Rubic Marines, so 2 20-man Rubic Marine squads, and then 10 Scarab Occult Terminators led by a Terminator Sorcerer, and then a battalion led by Ahriman on foot, 2 more Terminator Sorcerers, and then for the troop choices, it's just 3 5-man Rubic Marines. The idea of this list is you're just going to put 20 of those Rubric Marines in the middle of the table. You might put 20 of them in your deployment zone. You might deep strike them. For those of you who don't know, Thousand Suns can deep strike an infantry model for 1 command point or 2 for 3. So you don't need to worry about the tactical reserves rule. Those 5-man Rubric Marine squads can actually cast buffs onto the larger squad. Rubic Marines have a 1 damage smite, but they have access to the Thousand Suns unique discipline, so they can just cast off of that, so their spells are great. This list has a huge number of spell casts. You're reanimating guys every turn. Scarab Occult Terminators are really scary. They're going to be in deep strike. Starting with durable obsec things on objectives is going to be huge. The 4 deploying Primaris Marine troop choice that I have now forgotten about their name, Incursors? Question mark.
Yes.
Yeah, those ones. We're going to see those.
Infiltrators.
Yeah, Incursors and Infiltrators, we're going to see those. We're going to see Nurglings. We're going to see Thousand Suns, Rubric Marines on objectives. These things are just scary. Like they're scary. They do a lot of work. And I think that's probably the list I'm going to be going with. Oh, the battalion, by the way, is Cult of Magic, so that the sorcerers in that battalion are doing all of the goofy mortal wound nonsense. And we have Armand's going to be casting all of our buff spells because you want that +1 to make sure that his you're getting off Weaver of Fates and Glamour of Zinch on your whatever squad is sort of like in your opponent's face. That means they're going to be -1 to hit. They're going to have 3 up invulnerable saves, 2 up invulnerable saves against 1 damaged weapons. They don't really move. They just don't die. And because they're Cult of Time, you can reanimate 1 a turn. On a 9-up, it's D3. If they cast a spell on a 9-up, you can spend a command point and stand 1 of them up. The Scarab Occult Terminators are also eligible for all of these buffs. You're just basically standing up obsec bodies on objectives for the entire game. You don't even really care if you're that killy because you're just on the objectives, but you're also hilariously killy, so it's great. You have lots of really gross tricks. If you get wrapped up in melee, you want to still shoot, you can Dark Metal Crystal unit out of melee and they can just keep shooting. Also, if it's like a smallish unit, if they're like anything less than 12 wounds in melee with you, you can just smite them off in the Psyche phase and then keep shooting anyway. The other really scary thing is that we're back to, we don't know who goes first anymore. So doing things like just putting 20 Rubic Marines in front of your opponent is going to do kind of weird things to deployment if that's like your first drop. Because now they don't know if they could deploy near you, because if Rubic Marines don't move for one command point, they can double their firepower.
Yep.
And you're going to then press against that unit and Veterans of the Long War that unit. They're going to be hitting on 2, strength 4 with +1 to wounds, rerolling 1s to hit. If you can get a character with 3-roll aura close enough to them. And so is your opponent just like not going to deploy within 24 of them, or they're going to deploy everything hidden, or they're going to like go up really close and like hope they go first. It's kind of a wild thing. I'm also kind of there with the Raven Guard Centurions. Like if you just push someone in your opponent's face, all of the things where you get to redeploy and move models around at the beginning of the game are good again. Because we don't know what's happening. Things like Phantasm and Raven Guard redeploys are great. The other
Ben, just a question from the chat from Diego. Are we taking heavy warp flamers?
Are we taking heavy warp flamers? No. We are not. They're still bad. Like the great thing about flamers is like you can kind of ignore some of the penalties to hit things, or sometimes their damage output is actually good if you have like tricks and stuff with them. We don't have tricks with them. We hit on 2s anyway. They just don't work for us, unfortunately. Sad days. The other thing that we still need to find out is, do all of the stratagems in that book that just say Rubric Marine without specifying a legion, do those work on other legions? GW has now had 2 different opportunities to FAQ that away, and they haven't. And they know about it. I've emailed them. Other people have emailed about them. So, as of now, rules is written. They work. And GW's had enough
rubrics.
I actually think it might be Iron Warriors with the capping out at -1 to hit. Iron Warriors just kind of give you a lot of nonsense that you can do. If we basically rewrite that list to make that patrol Iron Warriors instead of Thousand Suns, you have to move the Scarab Occults into the Cult of Magic, makes it a little bit worse. You could probably find something else to do with them. But those Rubic Marines can ignore AP1. They can ignore AP2. They can re-roll all wound rolls against vehicles. They have 6-up Feel No Pains. It's disgusting.
There is a strong case for the Iron Warrior rubrics, but I bring up Alpha Legion ones because I've had success running Alpha Legion runs and then using Risen Rubrici and forward operatives at the same time when you deploy them.
Sure. Okay, that's pretty gross.
Yeah, especially if you're going first, you just plop them right in the middle of the board, and then since forward operatives is before the first round, you get to see your opponent's entire deployment, and then you can do your 9-inch pregame move.
Mm-hmm. The other list I was looking at was sort of like the quintessential 9th edition list. You just play the mission. It is a Nurgle battalion with 5 of your troop slots are just, we're using all 6 of our troop slots, by the way. 5 of our troop slots is just 9 Nurgling bases, because Nurglings did not go up in 9th edition. They stayed exactly where they are. Then you're going to bring 10 Plague Bears, not because you're excited about Plague Bears, but because a lot of the secondaries do require you to have infantry on objectives. And you do need infantry somewhere in the list. Also Furies. Furies move 12 inches. They have the infantry keyword. They're not actually good. I'm going to bring 1 unit, I think, because they can move fast enough to get out to an objective in the middle of the table with a movement without advancing, which means they can still do an action like raise banners or something like that. And then we're kind of going way out there. We're going to bring a great unclean one. It's going to be our Warlord. I don't know what its Warlord trait is yet because they're all terrible, but it needs to be our Warlord because we need to have a Nurgle model as our Warlord to have the great unclean one exalted unique relic, where every phase that it loses a wound, at the end of that phase it regains a wound, heals itself for D3 a turn, makes itself -1 to be hit, has a 4-up Feel No Pain, and most importantly it has the Plague Bell. So at the beginning of each of your turns, you roll D6 for every Nurgle unit within 7 inches, and on a 4-up you can bring back 1 model in that unit, but then your other unit is a maxed out, or other two more units rather, are two maxed out squads of Beasts of Nurgle, who only went up 5 points in 9th edition. Beasts of Nurgle, if you don't know, are T5, 5 wounds, the classic, 5 up vulnerable save, 5 up feel no pain. They don't really kill anything in melee. Nothing in this list can kill anything. You're just starting on every single objective and then sitting there for 5 turns.
The ultimate denial list is what you're saying.
Yep. I don't know if we're actually denying that many points, like on secondaries. Like you can score secondaries against this list. Like my opponent wants to take recon and move their models all over the map. I can't really stop them. I'm slow and I have no killing power. But I'm on all the objectives, so I'm also scoring the primary, and that's sort of the point. These are like the sorts of lists that I'm looking at in 9th edition, where it's just like lists that don't care what your opponent's doing. You don't need to stop your opponent. You just need to be on all the objectives with obsec things.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of those types of lists until some sort of meta starts to, coagulate and form.
Yeah, I mean, my gut reaction Custodes list right now is 2 shield captains on jet bikes, 3 minimum squad size units of guard, 5 Alaris custodians in deep strike, and then 2 units of bikers. But 1 unit has salvo launchers and the other has hard launchers.
Yep. I know this is a very similar thing.
Yeah, and like where my mind's going with these guys is the custodian guards, just the troops are going to run around and try and get to an objective somewhere. The custodians are going to be in deep strike. One of the shield captains is actually going to be in deep strike, and just to have that flexibility. And then the bikers are just going to go where they need to.
Yeah,
but I think the big thing for me is they have transhuman physiology and command points. So I'll be able to play with all their toys and make them hard to hurt.
You're actually going to be able to use stooping dive.
Yeah, we can actually use this strategy that we've all been excited about since the day that book was released.
Yeah, but the reason I'm also adding in salvo launchers is 1, they're baked into the cost now, which is nice. 2, it'll be great to have answers against flyers and aircraft, but also having a Melta profile available is great. I can give them +1 to wound. I can make their 6s explode on attacks. Like there are things I can do with the Custodes to amplify their power, but it's very much a kill and not die list.
Yeah, and keep in mind with Custodes that those jet bikes have obsec, so if all else fails, you just put them on objectives and you go, these are mine now.
Yeah, and I mean, let me just pull up the profile for the jet bikes because they are ridiculous. They've got their
2 up armor,
4 wounds,
5 wounds, 4 wounds. Okay.
Yeah, 4 wounds, 2 up save, 4 up info.
Yeah,
so
they don't die.
They don't die, especially if I go transhuman physiology.
Yeah, or you can, against certain armies, you can prevent rerolls.
Yeah,
that's like really silly against a lot of armies have rerolls and things. And
where it becomes really valid is what I have. Like that's why I like having the 2 squads of bikes. That's 2 objectives because it's hard to kill bikes. Bikes are going to kill you if they get to you. And if I get on those objectives and I kill your dudes, you're going to want to delete them. So I can say, you can only wound these guys on 4s, but wait, you can't reroll against these other guys.
And we kind of saw that a lot with Space Marine death balls, where they get hit with the classic is they get hit with Doom, right? And Custodes can literally just be like, nah, they didn't. Like, sure, they're doomed, but you can't use it. I don't care. It's a really, really wild upgrade that it's gonna. I mean, we all know it exists, but like until you actually like put your army down against it and like really think about the math behind like, okay, my strength doesn't matter, it's just wounding on 4s, and I can't pick up my dice after I roll them, like they don't die.
Yeah, and the reason. So the other thing is this: I would actually do max size units of bikes, but it's still low model count. And I want to have some amount of mobility. But if I can figure out a way to have a max size unit of bikes, they're not going to die. I won't let them. You're only going to move them on 4s, and you're not going to reroll against them ever. Have fun with that.
Playing against Custodes is going to be very much a game of forcing your opponent to use their command points before your opponent has run away with the score of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think what's going to be interesting is the other one is for me, I I know Dreadhost is really big, Solar Watch is the one that can get your guys into a fight.
They also have a pretty bitchin' paint scheme.
Fair enough.
I'm not painting white.
No, Solar Watch is the black ones.
No, it's not.
Oh.
You're thinking of Dreadhost.
Yeah, Dreadhost is the black armor.
Well, they both still look cool.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's everyone's favorite time. It's time for me to talk about Tau. So
Is it?
Yeah.
Because we are running a little long now.
Shucks.
I think Tau can be saved for another day.
How could be saved for another day? I mean, that's what we're gonna go with it. That's fine.
No, why don't we? Let's have me talk about my perspective 9th edition list, and that way I think we'll all have shared our lists, and I think that's a good.
That's fair enough.
Before you dive in,
Tau for one time.
Yeah, and also like
if I take that missile launcher on the bikes, just before you dive in, he's asking. Sometimes I think you need both. You need the missile launchers for anti-tank, to do some damage, to hurt people, but hurricane bolters matter, and that's why I have the 2 units.
Yeah, no Tau today. Don't worry.
Yeah, no Tau today. We can't go that long.
That's fair.
The podcast hosting is actually costing me more money now.
Uh-oh.
But let's talk about what I'm probably gonna aim for 9th edition, at least before a meta actually forms, and gonna be Chaos Knights, I think. I'm just gonna go straight into it. Just run triple Chaos Knights. I mean, double thermal got more expensive, but I think that just makes me drop 2 armigers, which I think is very doable. So I think I can still run a triple big knight with dual thermals, and that's gonna take care of any dreadnought or vehicle heavy list that I think is going to be popping up with the changes to vehicles and being able to shoot in combat and all that stuff. And then also for this list, Omar, I'm gonna need to borrow 2 of your knights, and I also need to go meet a guy in a shady alleyway for some armiger Moraxes. But yeah, no, aside from those 2 things, this is totally a list I'm gonna run.
Chris, Excellent. I've got 4 knights if you need them. 2 are going to be kitted out to be full chaos.
Good to know. I only need 2 big ones. I just need 4 Moraxes now.
Yeah. Sounds like a neat list.
Yeah. I mean, it served me well towards the later half of 8th edition, at least virtually in Tabletop Simulator, which we all know is not a real representation of Warhammer or the meta, but
close as we can get.
As close as we can get, because the last time I played that list was against a triple Keeper of Secrets list, and that was just a weird game. But with that, is there any last parting thoughts you guys want to get out? And Ben, please don't start talking about Tau.
I will not start talking about Tau. I apologize. No, I think that's everything for me.
Omar.
Yeah, likewise. Tau suck, but that's about it.
All right. So with that, just say thanks for listening to this week's show. We stream the show live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern on Twitch at twitch.tv/FlashGets40K. I would have changed that by now to our new branding, but I've changed the name too many times, so I actually can't do that for another month. But follow and subscribe. We're also anywhere that you can find podcasts, like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Subscribe there, leave a review. This has been the 3D6 Charge podcast on Twitch TV /Gets40K. So bye for now, and let's see. Our old outro was keep up the DACA, but we're not Flash Gets anymore. What should I say now?
Don't roll ones.
Don't roll ones on 3D6.